This is the Roll with Tay podcast. I'm your host, Tasia, aka Tay, and on this episode, I will be catching up with Christina. We haven't seen each other in years. We haven't seen each other in years. We're gonna talk about how she balances work, travel, mental health, and all the other things. What's up? How you been? Happy New Year.
Hey, absolutely happy new year, and oh my gosh, it's been a minute, perhaps 2 minutes.
It has.
So much to catch you up on, like
It
so much.
it has. And before we started recording, we were like, when did we first meet? When's the
Yeah,
last time we saw each other? I could have swore I have a picture of you. It's like three people. I think it's you. I don't know. Was it Tony's? It was Tony's, right?
it had to be the Tonys for
Okay.
sure.
Okay, it was a Tony's, maybe 2011. I'm trying to figure out. Okay. So, do you know Silas?
Yeah, of course,
Okay, all right, then okay, it definitely was 2011.
for sure. Yeah. Hi, Silas.
What? He was a guest on the my podcast as well. So shout out to Silas.
Shout out to Silas. Also, shout out to all of the 2011 like production crew on the Tonys
Yes,
that
yes,
year.
yes, yes, yes.
What is it? Rick, shout out to Rick,
Rick,
Amanda,
Way, Amanda.
Ariana.
Yep, Ariane.
hmm me and Jake Camp actually recently
Yeah.
rekindled a friendship. Yeah,
Wow.
he's going to like business school and he reached out, like, I saw you went to business school too. And so, that'll be part of the catch up,
Wow.
so.
That's dope. Wow. Yeah, shout out to 2011 Tony Awards crew. Wow. Yeah, Jake Camp. We follow each other on Facebook. I
Oh,
haven't seen
nice.
him in a while either, but
Man,
yeah.
that's
That's what's
wild.
up.
Dude, well, where do where do you want me to start? I could even take it back from like 2011 leading up to, I won't go into every single detail, but there are definitely some key mental health moments I would love to just.
Yeah, just just take us back. And to remind the audience, we work in TV production, freelancing, and that's how we met. And that's what I do. That's my bread and butter. I freelance and work on different productions, mainly live TV events, but the production world. So that's how Christina and I met. And all right, take it away. 2011, after the
Shoot.
Tony Awards.
Well, yeah. So in 2011, I was gearing up for grad school. And really quick for the audience, I identify as a cis straight black female. My pronouns are she, her, hers. So that is important context for the stories I will be telling for this. The thing with grad school at that time, I was very much in the mindset where it was thinking and giving into the conventional wisdom that like our parents and our elders kind of, installed upon us. You do XYZ, you check these boxes, all of these things will fall into place for you. So at the time, I thought, oh, okay, grad school, I'll do that. And I was kind of questioning my choices in freelance. It was interesting because I was happy. I loved it. I was having so much fun, but the people around me were kind of like, you should be on the other side. You should be like a TV executive. Like, you're so smart. What are you doing? So I thought, okay, yeah, maybe they're right. And I want something consistent. I want like a desk job, as we may refer to it. And I was talking to Rick, and the whole summer I was working on, I think, Boston Pops with him. And I was telling him, like, I'm so excited about like this trip that I'm about to finish. I was going to South Africa, Johannesburg, and Cape Town. And then I mentioned him, like, yeah, when I'm done with that, I'm gonna go to grad school. And he turns to me and he says, all summer, you have been telling me about this trip to South Africa. And this is the first I'm hearing about grad school. Think about that. And in the moment, I was kind of like, thinking, whatever, Rick, I'm going to go to school and then I'm going to be an executive and then everything will be fine. And it's little key phrases like that that I look back on and I'm like, man, I wonder if so go to grad school, end up pausing the program because I moved to LA. And then LA, I was fortunate enough to get a Emmy Foundation internship. And so they placed me at DreamWorks. And so I went to LA basically, yes, because of that internship, but because it's like, you're either in New York or you're in LA for the industry. So I went and it was fine. I had visited LA before. I had, known what it was like. I had talked to some friends. I'm an alum at Emerson College. Shout out to Emerson. And it was kind of another conventional norm. You're interested in the industry, you go to the school, oh, you go to LA. And this is where like mental health enters the chat, right? So, so I'm out there, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm doing the things. And like the internship, it was paid. It was 8 weeks. I had money saved up and I had an apartment in the valley. It was cute. It was fine. Immediately, like reflecting now on this moment, I'm like, I did not have community. I went because I was like, this is what I do for my career. I know a couple of people that I went to school with, but true community, like people that you know from college aren't necessarily your community, aren't necessarily your friends. They're people you're cool with, they're acquaintances that you're comfortable enough like hitting up whenever, but people that I would have consistent touch base with, that we're getting together on weekends, we're going to parties together, we're checking in on it, like that was not there. So in the moment I'm thinking like, why am I like so sad, why am I so lonely, like I don't understand. And that was part of it. And some folks may listen to this and think like, were you doing the work, were you like go putting yourself out there networking, joining meetup groups? I want to say yes and no. Yes, in the sense that the networking part, because that goes hand in hand with career, right? So that was that. But the social aspect of it, it was also a matter of feeling accepted. Like it's so hard truly, like to put yourself out there, and then if you do it and then it's like in that moment are you thinking, okay, I'm doing the thing, things are cool, but are these people you're really connecting with? And are you being accepted for if we want to be frank about LA, are these people genuinely being your friends, or are they keeping you in their circle because they think you can do something for them, which is this unfortunate reputation that transplants bring to LA. Yeah, it's unfortunately true. And I say that with conviction because the folks who were born and raised, whether in LA proper, surrounding area, or just Southern California, folks born and raised, those are the truest homies that I actually met out there, which was so surprising. And so it wasn't until that moment when I had, I guess, 5 or 6 local Southern California people, and understanding my relationship dynamic with them compared to other transplants living in LA, that I realized the difference between the two. So for anybody not living in LA but thinking about moving out there, please go with that dynamic understanding. Super, super important. But yeah, so that was my life for a solid at least 4 years. And I had been fortunate because I didn't have to freelance in LA. I did the internship. I got a seasonal 7-month position with NFL Network. I got a full-time role as an executive assistant to the head of production at MTV, which exactly, like if I said that to my very much younger self, she'd be like, "What? We did it. We're good." But that role, surprisingly, well, if I back up, the NFL was cool. I think it was cool in the sense that it was I was able to be around a lot of people my age, just younger people doing the same thing, figuring it out. And so in that sort of sense, I started making more friends, making a community. So that started to work out. MTV, same thing. It's like you become friends with people you work with, but that's where the dynamic of the fakeness you hear about, the inauthenticity, yeah, like whew. And those two places socially were cool, and the work cultures were unfortunately toxic.
Imagine.
Yeah, and it was, I don't want to say surprising, so to speak. It's just that at the time you're thinking, you're young. You're thinking, gosh, I'm so excited to be here. This is going to look great on my resume, and this is what people kill for, people live for, that it was just something I continuously to struggle with, really trying to understand, like, I'm doing the things, I'm checking the boxes, why am I so unhappy? And I think when I was at MTV, also a little, so I gave you, how I identify at the top. And with this, for MTV specifically, my department, all white women, all white women. I think there, at least the executives, there was the coordinators were also white women. That's the other cis straight white women. It's often cis straight white women. We had one assistant. She, I believe, identified as Filipina. Other than that, it was me. Um, And if by happenstance any of the folks who worked with me during my time at MTV, if they're listening to this, they might say, like, oh, but what about the interns? Or, oh, what about like the people before? That's during my time specifically there, that was my environment. So it was also one of those things. I had landed at MTV because at NFL, one of the executives, their sister was an executive at MTV. And they said, like, I was fortunate to be like, hey, Christina's great. They gave them my resume. I got the interview, and that's how it worked out. So I think one thing about MTV is it was one of those prime environments where it's like they want you to come in and know everything, even though this is by description listed as an entry level job, right? So there's all of these little games. And looking back, after all these years of experience now, I could do it with my eyes closed. I can be everything that they want. I also think that I look back now and I have to give myself grace and think about, like, yeah, all of the look at me, I'm doing what everybody else is doing, but I don't look the same as everybody else. So could that have played a role into who approaches me or not, how information is given to me or shared or chooses not to be? And I think it would be very naive if people say, like, you all started from the same and this that. I think it's very naive to say that. And I think especially if it's one of those people who benefited from that environment were to say that. And it was just same sort of thing. I was so miserable. I had a panic attack at one point. I was marginalized from the other assistants. Basically, what happens with the assistants, it's common, for 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years, it's common that assistants move on. And at one point, I was just the only person of color in my department. There weren't many of us. I think there were, I don't know, 12 overall. But I remember there was one day I was totally blatantly marginalized. Like the other two were going to get coffee, and it's like they didn't even acknowledge me. And it was just this weird buildup of things. And then that was the day where I was just kind of like, it just kind of broke me. And I should correct myself, sorry. There was one executive who identified as Latina. And the thing, I call that out because I still think that in an environment like that, everyone is a product of it. So one day, just thinking about it, I'm like, oh, I can't believe like that happened. One day there was this whole thing about what they wanted the interns to do. And after being a PA and seeing how interns were treated, I was very much thinking, I don't want to treat interns that way. And for anyone who's asking, like, what do you mean? It For whatever reason, it is some weird Hollywood industry standard to just you're running to get coffee, you're running to get lunch, like it's this weird psychological game where it's like we're going to give you these super mundane tasks that we already know that you're overqualified to do because on our job description we required you to have experience even though it's an entry level role. And then, yeah, we're going to make you do all these mundane tasks. But in the middle of all of these mundane tasks, you have to demonstrate to us that you are intelligent and you are incapable, or you are capable of doing more. So then we take some sort of interest in you to engage you. And then that's how conversation starts. That's how more opportunities start. And then you begin your journey to ascend on the corporate ladder, which, again, I think it's just this stupid system that's, just stupid, for lack of a better term. So I'm thinking I was fortunate where the times I was an intern, I didn't have to do all of that. I was very particular about the internships I chosen. And I remember one day there was this whole thing about like they wanted the intern to like go and get coffee and go get lunch. And I was just like, can we just not do that today? Like, there's so many other things that need to be done today. And like, no, like someone else go get it. Also, you are an executive, you're a coordinator, you're a manager, you're a human being. You don't have to be glued to your desk. Like, your company should be okay with you stepping away for a minimum, I don't even want to say 30 minutes, 45 minutes, because it takes forever to stand in line and pay. So a minimum of 45 minutes for you to just catch a breather and reset your mind, step away from your desk, and then come back. Why would you not take advantage of that? Why are y'all so adamant about using the intern to do that?
It's privilege. You've made it to the top.
Yes,
Why am I going to get my own lunch? I'm gonna make
exactly.
somebody else go get it. People ask me, I'm like, oh, you need it? No, I'm going to get my own lunch.
Yeah.
It has to be where I can't literally step away. And like you said, I want to step away. I
Yes,
need to step away. I'm not, no, sending someone to go get my lunch and your laundry. And it gets weird where it's just like, yo, why are you having someone else do this for you?
exactly. And it's so, I will say there's certainly certain like people and roles outside or overlapping with that corporate culture where it's like, okay, yeah, you do need, if you can't be in two places at once, I get it. My thing is like your day to day, you're in your office, lunch. Like this is a basic human need. You should absolutely but I digress. So the thing was, I basically told another assistant like we're not sending the intern to get lunch, we're not sending the intern to get coffee. If you want someone to do it, you go do it, and then give them the opportunity to do something more productive that will contribute to their learning. And I don't know what was said, and I don't know how it was said about me. So, in my moment, when I was delivering that message, I wasn't yelling, I wasn't screaming. I was talking very much like this in an assertive manner. And the Latina executive pulled me in and was like, man, that was really aggressive how you like said that to insert name of assistant, like, yelling and all of that. That's so unnecessary. And it was one of those moments. It's one of those moments you hear about, that it's one of those moments you hear about, unfortunately, about Black women in the workplace. You say something with an assertive tone to a white woman, and they interpret it as that or they weaponize it as that, and in that moment you feel gaslit. Like, did I actually yell? This isn't me yelling, but do they interpret this as yelling? Do I need to be more docile in my delivery? And you go on this whole mental thing of how to contort yourself to not be who you authentically are to make them feel more comfortable, which is the thing. Again, at the time I was young, didn't realize what was happening, but that was just one of many experiences. That was MTV in a nutshell, you know. That's like that's the main highlight. That's the high. So like marginalized by the assistants, being told I was aggressive, and I definitely was not in that moment. And then the third thing was having a full on panic attack. And even though with the assistants, the relationships with them were like hot and cold, there was that day that I did have the panic attack, one assistant did, you know, she did kind of pull me aside, and we like took a step outside, and she, you know, she was caring in that moment. So it was that where it was kind of like, man, I wish this was consistent. I wish this was more of what our friendship, quote unquote, was. Because other times when we would hang out, we, you know, it would be at like rap parties and stuff. And I think that's the thing that I realized LA was contributing to me being unhealthy and not happy. It was less about how can I cultivate and foster friendships and community, and it turned into let's just hang out with people who are just looking for the next party, looking for the next hangout. So it got dark real quick, and there was a whole falling out situation with a roommate, and it was just it was just bad. So on paper, when I'm able to say, yeah, I worked for NFL, MTV, and Netflix, which I'll also get into, but when people actually talk to me about my personal experience, just non-professional experience in LA, I'm very open with them, and I tell them, you know, LA wasn't for me. I didn't like it. It would take a lot of combination of factors to consider moving back there. And it's one of those places where it's like you have to go and be your own jury on LA. It's super easy to lose true friends to the, I say, like the facade of fog, glitz and glamour, for, you know, just for whatever feeling or whatever image comes to your mind. That's what I'm feeling, that's what I imagine when I hear about LA in general. Yeah, that was all that. Actually, after MTV, I was so miserable, and I just was like, I gotta hold out for 2 years because I want my 401k to vest, right? Yeah, so I did it, and invested, and I jumped right back to MTV, or not MTV, NFL. I took on it was a part-time role, and I wanted it because I thought, great, this is a company I know the systems, it's part time. Let me just decide what I want to do with this extra time on my hands, and if I want to work towards staying in LA or move back east, specifically New York. And wouldn't you know it, maybe 2 or 3 weeks into being part time, they announced that we're converting this team to full time, but there's only a certain amount of full time positions. So if you want it, you have to interview. Now, the joke is, I don't want to stay. I don't want to stay. It's like I had been there before. I was like, I've experienced some highs and lows there. You know, as much as the good was there, I was like, I don't want to deal with the bad. But I had gotten that job because the vice president of production had called me while I was at MTV, and he was the one to be like, "Hey, I want you to like come and work on this team that we're building out." And at the time, I was very, do I regret it? I'm not sure, but at the time, I was I was conflicted. I was like I already want to leave LA because things were so bad with MTV. I wanted the 401k to vest, and I was interested more in production for creative marketing and advertising, and this role was in media administrative media administration and accounting. So not the stuff that we would, you know, deem as fun. So at the time I told him no. And then when something else had went down at MTV, and I was just like, fuck this. And I called them back and I was like, do you have something else? I'll come and work for you. I just need this 401k to vest and then I'll be there. So I went back and then, yeah, I took it on thinking it'd be part time. But because they converted it to full time and because I called in that favor with the VP, I couldn't not interview. So I interviewed, and then I don't know if I interviewed so well or because they knew I was the person bought in by the VP, but I got the fucking job. I got the job full time. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm here for a little bit. And same sort of thing. Like, I'm thinking it'll be cool, surrounded by young people, and just this team was more diverse at the time. But man, my depression it was one of the symptoms of depression. It's hard to get up in the morning sometimes. Like, you can just wake up and just not want to live. You just want to go back to sleep and just stay asleep. Or you'll be driving, and this has been an intrusive thought, and this is a symptom of depression. If you're driving on the freeway in traffic, in LA traffic, and you're like, I hope a truck hits me so I don't have to go to this job and I can just stay in the hospital, something's wrong. Something is very wrong. So at the time, of course, I didn't investigate that. I didn't think, why am I feeling this way? Why didn't I investigate it? Well, because again, I shouldn't say for whatever reason, but if we take a step back, we have to remember that Black people, especially Black women, we can't give anyone who doesn't identify as us a reason to hold something against us. And we're not allowed to cry at work or in public in general. We have to be almost, just thinking about it sounds robotic. We have to show up a certain way. We have to be a certain way. We have to carry ourselves a certain way, all to make sure that we don't threaten, the comfort or white fragility of our corporate counterparts. And man, if you have depression or any sort of like mental disability, forget it. Like it's so that was the thing. That was the thing that was rooted in me at the time. And so no, I didn't do anything about it. I was just kind of like, you got to think about the end goal. This is going to lead to something greater, or, whatever. Just, it's the optics of keeping the NFL on your resume for however long a time. Don't have gaps on your resume, blah, blah, blah. All of the things that, thinking about it now, it's stupid. It's all stupid. So I went back, and this group, it was more diverse. We didn't have any white people on our team, actually. Everyone was either Latina, there was a Asian guy, and then our two leaders were Filipina, I believe, and then me, the Black girl. Things were fine until they weren't, and they weren't fine because there was this one co-worker, for lack of a better term, let's say that they were an agent of chaos. They like to, I don't want to say gossip. Gossip are unfortunately part of like a political work environment, but I'm trying to be discreet, but they would hear things. There was like this room that we were all in because they were renovating parts of the floor. So we were in this room temporarily. And then our boss's office was like down the hall. So we're in this room, and other people, they're sharing things, saying things just freely and commonly, like you would amongst your comrade coworkers. And then this person would go to our manager, basically be the, I don't want to say snitch, mole, rat, you pick whatever word you want to describe. But this is what this person would do. And then there was a coworker, something had happened because the coworker had told me, it feels like whenever I say something around this person, I don't feel safe. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Again, I'm just like minding my business here by accident, just like I'm not one. I don't like office politics. I don't like the fakeness that comes with office politics. Gossip. I don't like gossip if it's not someone that I'm not truly friends with outside of work. So I'm resistantly listening to this person, I guess, try to confide in me or give me a heads up, but this person says, I said so and so to the mole, rat, etc. And when I went to talk to our manager today, almost verbatim, the manager repeated back to me what I told the mole, rat, snit. And it was like, oh, that's what this person, okay, that's good to know, noted. And then another person tells me, hey, like when you came back, this person was saying, do y'all remember, okay, this girl Christina's coming back. You guys remember her? Do you remember her in a good way or a bad way? And I'm thinking, who asked that? Like, who here? I'm like, I just, again, here by accident. I'm here from circumstances. I was ready to do part time and just, check out, do my little 28 hours, and then figure out the rest of my life. And then, yes, I am here full time. I'm capable of doing this job, but I had other plans, but I'm here. And come to find out, like, this person, it's their dream to work at the NFL, be there full time, da da this, da da that. And I'm like, that's great. You can have it. I like working here. It's not my dream to work here. And if the NFL, if they would have me, I'm not opposed to working for them again. But that changed because of what happened the second time. Again, depression, don't want to get out of bed, thinking like, let's get hit by a truck instead of showing up to work. And yeah, after a certain point, it affected my work. In general, I don't like showing up to work early. I'm not an early person. I don't like it because of the risk of like, if I show up at 8 and if I end up staying late too, like that, I don't like that. So it was common for me to it was common for me to not be there at 9, maybe 10. But when the depression hit, it was super inconsistent in the morning, and I would just be lucky if I actually made it out of bed, and like actually made it to the office. And of course, when managers, employers, and whatever don't have that context, and if you're not getting the professional treatment that's available to you, it comes off a certain way, right? So that I won't deny. It was that, and then there was also a point when after a while, I don't know what happened. I was starting to be treated differently. And yeah, I started to be treated differently. My manager gave me a project and she didn't tell me that she was giving it to someone else. Just all of these weird things started to happen. And then there was also a time where I was just kind of like, I don't care. I don't, it's like you're not, I'm trying to like be nice with people, and they're telling me, or my manager's telling me like everybody feels tense when you're there, and I'm like, I just show up and I just work. I'm not pestering anyone, I'm not bothering anyone. I try to be friends with people, they don't want to be friends with me. I really, and for folks who are listening to this, again, before we jump to the, well, what did you do? Like, what aren't you telling us? I genuinely want to tell you, I wish I knew. I wish I knew what I did to understand, to make people feel this way. And I think that's the thing. People actually told me why, or if people actually sat down to have a conversation with me instead of playing fake, I think maybe that dynamic would have been different. And again, I just, encourage listeners to again think about the dynamic and just remember, regardless of, even though I was like at an all more predominantly white female team at MTV, and now this team, it's certainly more diverse. Still, at the end of the day, I am still a Black woman in corporate America. And it's like that whole ideation of allyship and, oh, people of color need to stick together. It is not a blanket statement. It is not always like that. And I think that's just a reality that people have to realize. And I think that also, it's kind of revalidated with that phrase, how people will sometimes say skin folk ain't kinfolk. I mean, that comes from some sort of experience. So yeah, without going too much into the specifics, it got weird, it got messy. And instead of giving me constructive feedback, they would just tell me how many times I messed up on something. And this, and an example of that is we had to manually enter. There was a lot of manual data entry. Systems were not automated, but they expect you to be like a machine. And they expect people to be like machines in general. And I think that's emphasized a bit more when you're in a department that has to deal with accounting, which I get. You don't want accountants messing up your payroll or something like that, and I get it. So my thing was you kind of have to think here's someone with depression not getting treatment for depression, showing up to work in an environment where they're being marginalized, people are saying one thing to them and then doing another thing, or they think that they're confiding in them and then they're being ratted on and their manager's confronting them. Like, it's this toxic work culture combined with depression. You're bound to make a mistake.
Yeah,
So yeah, like after they put me on a PIP, and I was like, this is a thing. This is what they meaning other Black women say. Like, there's something where they're like, we don't understand what we're doing wrong. You're not telling us what we're doing wrong, but you'll tell us once you put us on the PIP. And then just thinking about it, it gets me so frustrated how my manager like treated me differently. And for example, I went to my manager and I expressed interest in managing the intern. And so brought it up, however long goes by, don't hear about it. 2 days before we're supposed to have an intern, they bring me in and they're like, oh, you said that you wanted to like manage the intern. Okay, you should like conduct the interviews too. So that was total BS. Why did you put me on this time crunch to, like, it sucked. It sucked. It was totally unfair. I told you at the time that I did because, planning ahead, it gives us time. Like, let's discuss, what does it look like, you managing the intern? How do you want to be involved? And then having enough time to, yeah, look at the candidate resumes, do the actual interviews, etc. But no, instead you give me like 48 hours to pull this off, to even hire the intern. And in the moment, I was excited to be able to do it, but looking back, it totally unfair. If I had told that to someone in the moment, they probably would have told me, hey, watch out for this manager. That's a dick move. So because of this, our candidates, their interns, I'm thinking, this is we're a new department. This is our first intern. I'm the first person that gets to hire the there's some sort of optics tied to this decision. So I don't want to say unfortunately. Instead, I will say from the circumstances and the candidate pool, I don't want to say, I don't think I picked, in the moment, was he the best candidate? Sure. I think instead it would have been better to have not picked him because he would have been fine. He was a white guy in like finance. If his resume, we went through and hired him and everything like that, but he ended up getting placed in like the NFL junior rotation program and stuff because of it. He probably still works there. I haven't checked or anything, but you know what I mean. Like, there is a little bit of regret in the sense that I didn't take the time to think, like, if I look at these candidates and think about who is the person who is a great fit and needs this opportunity, as opposed to who is the person that checks all of these boxes and is going to be a good fit and is going to make me look good as the person hiring them. It's really kind of shameful looking at it. He no, he was a good intern. Everybody liked him, but I do second guess it. I think about the positive impact I could have made on someone else's life if I had been more thoughtful and intentional about that decision. And also if I had been given more than fucking 48 hours to pick someone. And yeah, so that happened. And yeah, that happened. And again, that was just an example of just little stuff. But after that had happened, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, like, let's get geared up for the next time, the next round of interns. And my manager goes to me, well, you did it once. We're going to give everybody an opportunity to manage. And I, this is one of these weird things where navigating how to balance, yes, if something comes about that will be a growth opportunity for multiple team members, yeah. And then the other side of that is, this was my idea. No one else expressed interest to you. Why? So how, that's something I'm still trying to navigate in life. It's something that certainly came up a couple of different times when I was at Netflix. And it's frustrating in the sense that for the things that I was excited about and I was proactive about during the second time at NFL Network, it goes again to all of those things where it's like, it's so interesting that instead of having a conversation with me to say like, hey, we see that you're interested in these things. We know you need to do these things too. What can we do? What can we work towards to make the situation better? And then instead they're like, we're putting you on a PIP. And instead of giving constructive feedback, it's like, here's a number you transposed, here's another number you transposed, and here's how many emails come in, and here's how many emails you touch. And it's just, it feels wrong. It feels wrong. And how to articulate, oh, then what would you recommend they have done? For starters, being on a PIP and telling me I'm already feeling down, I'm already depressed, I'm already in a toxic work culture, I'm already being marginalized. You put me on a PIP, I feel even lower. Instead of giving me constructive feedback that I can actually act on and improve, you just tell me, this is how many times you transposed a number today. And it's just kind of like, you just keep getting knocked down. How do you expect me to fight to get back up when all of these things are in place for me to not even get there? But anyway, so that all happened. I ended up quitting. I remember something had happened one day. My manager lied to my face about something. I found out something about a project that I thought I would be leading. I went to my manager, basically being discreet, not saying so-and-so told me this. I just asked like a general question, and based off of her response, I was like, okay, she's lying. This is it for me. So I basically took the rest of the day off, and then I made the plan of when I would give my notice. And I didn't finish out the time that was required of the PIP, quote unquote, but also at the same time, who knows what would have really happened? Like, it would have been nice to improve during the PIP and whatever, and know that I did everything I could do, and maybe they would have kept me on but if we're being honest, we know PIPs don't end well with Black women. So I ended up leaving, and then I had been deciding, I told myself, I'm only staying in LA if I get a job at Netflix. All of my other job applications were in New York specifically. I was ready to move. And in the 11th hour, because I only gave myself, I think, 2 months to land an actual interview, and then I would see where it would go from there. But yeah, in the 11th hour, I got an interview from Netflix. I was like, I guess I'm staying. So the thing with Netflix, and I had been interviewing with Netflix on and off for a few years since I was at MTV. So it had been a little bit. And so I was like, all right, finally did it, finally landed in it, only stay in LA for Netflix, go through with it. And Netflix was a dream. It was absolutely a dream. I was there for a little over 4 years, and everything, because it was tech, it's like everything anti-Hollywood, It's like you work wherever you work from home when you want, all of that original freedom and responsibility stuff circa, 2018 is when I started there. So circa 2018 and earlier. The work from home freedom, like you don't have to be at your desk all day. You can work wherever you want within the building. The food that was there, the quality of food that was there, people leading all sorts of resource groups. Like you have the traditional, like the Black at Netflix, Pride at Netflix, all of that. And then you have like the mental health group, you have like the disability awareness group. I'm forgetting the proper titles for each of them, but any sort of group that would help empower you as a person so you can bring your best self to be the best employee that you were hired to be. That's what Netflix was. And the money was there. I made a dumb amount of money and it's all gone now, but it felt so good to be compensated well. And my mental health, it just changed. I remember talking to my friend. I've been friends with him since I was an intern at NFL Films in Jersey. Hi, Eric. Shout out to Eric. I remember talking to him and he's like, dude, you just sound happier. Like there's such a difference. And it meant a lot coming from him because he has very much been a friend that he's been through the journey. He's seen the mental health journey. He's seen the career struggles and advancements. So for him to have said that, that was really powerful. When I talked to my mom and everything, she said she could tell there was a difference, especially because especially during the NFL, I would call her after I would come home from work just crying like is it okay if I quit? Like I think I want to, I need to. And she's like, you're fucking miserable, do it. But I ended up never going through with it until the one time that I did. And yeah, for a really good while, Netflix was everything I needed, everything I wanted, and that's the only place I wanted to be. And I think it's telling to have been there for a little over 4 years. There's no doubt, I don't want to say no doubt, there's a good chance I would still be working there if I hadn't encountered the manager that I did during my last bit of time there. So the thing with Netflix, there are a couple of different things. When I was like going through what I did at the NFL, I did start seeing a therapist. Didn't know what to look for, didn't know what to expect. I just kind of went because I was like, I'm not supposed to be feeling this way. And it was just my first real introduction to talk therapy. And looking back, there are a couple of things where I'm like, oh, okay, that probably wasn't the right therapist for me, but at the time, they got the job done. And with Netflix, people will sometimes ask, oh, is it true that they do this? Is it true that I like to say everything is true? It just like I say everything is true. It just depends on the team that you're on. So I say that because I was on the team that was called at the time Studio Technology. And it was just as fucking cool as it sounded. It was like we were creating all of these different tools and products that people on set would use. And it was right up my alley because, you know, freelancing for, I don't know what it's like now, Tay, but you're gonna have to tell me. But if it's anything like it was in 2011, Netflix was the future. They're like, we're trying to help y'all. And so you don't have to work 14 hours a day. And, you're not walking around with a copy of a call sheet or a picture of it or multiple pictures of it. It's like, just open this app. And there it is. It's on your phone. You don't want to use it? Okay, no problem. It was a very much like, look at all this cool stuff we have. You don't have to use it. We won't mandate it. Freedom and responsibility, whatever. But it was, and I get it because with breaking into the industry, it's so hard, right? And then once people are there of a certain stature, they're like, we don't want to take chances, blah 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 blah. So I get it. So everything with Netflix was great. I got promoted like twice within a year. I got like a raise, and it was, look, like I said, everything in the news is true. Just depends on the team you're on. There were some people that were surprised. I was surprised that were there, because some of these people, they would be like, they'd be the people that were part of like the acts, the insidious acts, quote unquote, from like MTV, or I've heard friends of friends who, and it's just kind of like, it's interesting that you come here and then overnight you just are supposed to be expected to switch off everything that you've been bred to do. And, and these are people who are way further up the corporate ladder than I, but for me to have been in, I guess, between early entry level career and lateral moves to borderline mid intro, mid level, mid senior, it's kind of like y'all haven't had to deal with the bullshit we had to deal with recently. So it's concerning to see you here. If you, it was one of those things where it was like, okay, like the tech people get it. The tech people, they come from environments like this where they're like, we don't have time for bullshit. We're trying to make something great. It's the Hollywood side of it. So like the production side and all like the traditional quote unquote Hollywood side of it. That's the stuff you had to watch out for and see how they interpret and apply the actual the actual culture. I will say, I don't want to say downfall, but something that very much left a bad taste in my mouth with Netflix. First off, so again, everything was great until it wasn't. So the first thing was, and this is the context that kind of leads to the story of the ending of Netflix. 2020 happened. Don't know if you remember it, but
Yeah.
So with the thing with Netflix during 2020, because we, like many other tech companies, they're already set up to be like, yeah, work from home whenever, wherever. So for us, it wasn't like a switch went off, it was a business as usual. So we kept going because we're thinking, we don't know how long it's going to be. We'll be back just like with everyone else, we'll be back in the office in like a couple weeks, maybe a couple months. And that was wild. Because saying it now, it's a very matter of fact statement. Thinking back and living it, I would work 14 hours at my desk. And I think back and I'm just like, you got out of the business of working 14 hours a day. And here you are, just like a machine. Could it be because it's not as physically demanding? Could it be because it's like you are excited to work, you love your coworkers, you love the mission? Does it make the time just fly? That's great. However, and at the same time, it was so dangerous. I was definitely a person who, without work being that anchor to a routine, a daily routine, it was very easy to get lost in the throes of the dark side of the pandemic. But with Netflix, one thing, or if I can tell the audience something to remember is how stress manifests in different ways and how it will sneak up on you. So one thing that I didn't realize was I would say the word vendor. I would replace random words with the word vendor. This was because I was the vendor data lead basically for however long, but it was a platform space and all different parts of the studio was integrated with it. And so my task within this role, it's basically standardizing the data, standing up taxonomies that are scalable, leading a team, a remote distributed team of 4. The model I had set up for my team, it was basically the first model, or not the first model, but I had an analyst. We were used to having data admins, and data admins report to leads and specialists and project managers. But I said, I want an analyst, or I want to turn this data admin into an analyst position. And then the different analysts, it would be, instead of doing like a catch-all, it's like you'd have specific parts of the actual platform that you were responsible for every day, or certain projects based on like your expertise of being an admin. And then the analyst, they'd still do that, but they were also more of a partner with me in conversations with engineering. So this model of a team, I was the first to do it. because it was one of two platform spaces. And then after I had left, that same model was applied to the rest of the team and the rest of the data spots. So here I am, a Black woman, the only Black woman on the team, doing the most, having the most direct reports, being one of the two largest platforms, data platforms. I'm just making impact. You know, that's one of the things that they say, like, we want you to make. I'm like, I definitely have been making impact. I was part of Black At. I was one of the pilot treasurers, and then I stood up the allyship, Black At allyship pod, which was basically this, no idea what it's like now, hope it still exists, but during 2020 and leading up to that, I was like, hey, like, are we gonna do anything allyship related? And there was some, I don't know the history of it, but basically before I got there, there was some like back and forth about it, and there was some hesitation. And then I was talking to, the leads a little bit more, just trying to understand, like, why would we not have this? Why would we not reintroduce it? We're the largest ERG, and there's people who want to be allies to us. They want to understand. They don't know how to. They don't know what's okay. I think, if anything, standing this up, it would be yeah, it's okay. Come and talk to us. You start your learning journey, meet you where you're at, the whole thing. So 2020 hit. George Floyd was the turning point. And then I was basically like, I'm going to make this Slack channel. And if people are going to join it, cool, that's what's up. I make it thinking maybe 30 people will join. If we get to 100, that would be cool. In a single day, we reached 3,000 Netflix employees. So it's like they were there the whole time. There could be people, like, I'd like to think all those people were there to learn and, so on and so forth. There may have been people there with, different motives and to see and understand what they could retaliate against. But either way, that's something I'm proud of that I did. And I led that for, I think, at least a year. This context is helpful because this leads me to the last manager I had at Netflix. Let's call her Karen. No, not Karen. Karen's overused. Let's call her Rebecca. So Rebecca, I had a really great rapport. I had three different managers while I was at Netflix. First two had a great rapport with, and the third one was the first where they were being hired from the outside. So the other two were already working at Netflix when we got reorged or hired directly to report to them. So I went to HR and I said, hey, and this is how different Netflix is when you're talking to HR proactively to ask them, hey, I have a new manager coming in. They're not only going to be a new manager to me, but they're going to be a new employee to Netflix. What are things you recommend that I can set for our first one-to-one to start off on a good foot? Establish a rapport, our work dynamic, conversation starters, etc. So HR got back to me with a couple of recommendations, and I do those things during our first one-to-one. And I remember my manager saying, like, working with you is going to be a dream. Like, I loved your agenda, and I love how, like, you run meetings. Like, I invited the manager to a meeting I had been running weekly for a while. And yeah, again, things were good until they weren't. So the turning point was, there were two parts of the turning point. The first was there was this behemoth of an integration going on with the vendor data platform and one of our legal tools. And it sucked. It was one of those things where it was like, do we really need to do this? But it's part of the strategic bets, whatever. But from a data perspective, it sucked because there's no guards in place for clean data entry. And there's also, there's no adequate tooling available to do quality check on the data or to clean up the data during integration. A lot of the stuff is manual. So again, it's like we're prepping this data to be ingested and all of this sort of stuff. So the thing is, while this is happening, there's other like frustrations. The frustrations meaning the approach of how the project should be executed, who's going to do what parts of the project. So all of these things. And it was frustrating in the sense that here I am being a vendor data lead. I'm in this position. I did the nitty gritty work. I've been promoted and I've used the knowledge from my nitty gritty work to inform the things I choose to do strategically. So when having conversation with partners, it's hard to respect the vision that they have as engineering, product, and design partners. And at Netflix, that was the first team: product design, engineering. And then data, it's kind of, we're embedded, but it's a little secondary. And my constant struggle, and I hope my team at that time would still agree, that it's like we would have to bust our asses to tell these people, if you do X, Y, and Z, your data is going to be fucked up. Point blank, period. But if you do ABC or X, Y, and A, the data won't be as bad. Just these different conversations. And it's most of the time they'd understand. And like, if you come prepared with examples and fight data with data, they get it. But there's other times when it's kind of like they would like challenge you for the sake of challenging you or something, or because they were so stubborn that they wanted to do it to, instead of cutting their loss on something else. And it would something contentious like that. And I was on the fence about if I wanted to keep doing this. I was, already curious about product management. I just thought it was so cool, and the people that I worked with and everything that they get to do. And I was also thinking, should I keep working at Netflix? Not because I didn't want to, but because I needed to for the longevity of my career. So I'm feeling a little conflicted about things already. And the massacre in Atlanta, the hate crime against the AAPI community, happened in Georgia. And so my manager, she sends us a Slack that says, I'm wrapping my head around these acts. Something else. I want to have a conversation about allyship. Now, I am the head. And, it's like, I'm one of the leads for the allyship Black Hat Pod, which I stood up. I'm like, I'm not, expert, quote unquote, in allyship, that's what I did. And I'm thinking, I'll step back and sit, like, I'm here as a resource, but let's see where this goes. And then my work wife, Sarah, hi, ma'am. She is at the time lead of Pride at Netflix. So already our manager has 2 ERG leads reporting to her. So we're very curious and watching like a hawk of how this is going to turn out. Because if it's problematic, we're going to say something. Has the conversation. Our Asian coworker was not in the meeting for obvious reasons. Like, she's probably coping or has better things to do than to engage in this conversation for mental reasons. Totally understood that. Everyone else is, again, white woman. So I'm the only person of color there. And the conversation starts with, this is a no judgment zone. In the context of a meeting with allyship, and starting it with, this is a no judgment zone, something felt off. And to this day, I still haven't found the right set of words to articulate why that was wrong. But my attorney said that's already an invitation to invite mental and emotional harm to those that would be impacted. So already, Then the conversation happens. I won't give specifics, but basically, one coworker says something severely tone deaf. And me and work wife Sarah, we're not surprised by this comment from this person. So, and then there's a third person. Hi, other ma'am. I won't name names though, just in case that they would be uncomfortable with it because they still work at Netflix. But the three of us are basically like, did you hear what I hear? Yeah, I heard what you heard. Am I wrong in thinking that what was said was wrong? No. Okay. Would y'all support me in reaching out to our manager to say something? And they were all on board. So we all say something individually to our manager, and there's immediate resistance. Oh no, I didn't give the assignment. I didn't give the assignment correctly. I didn't set the context right. This was a no judgment zone. I don't understand why you're even bringing this up. So I'm like, okay, this will be interesting. So the manager basically tries to damage control it and talks to me and work wife Sarah separately. And at one point, Sarah's like, there's a one-to-one with our manager. I'd be comfortable if you'd be there just so I can vocalize. I'm like, yeah, of course. And so I'm just there listening for moral support and everything. And then there's a one-to-one with me and the manager. I'm fine. You know, if people wanted to join for moral support, cool. But I'm like, I'm not afraid to say what I have to say if needed. So the manager says something. I can't remember what they said specifically, but they said something that made me feel, I remember my feeling. It felt so wrong and uncomfortable, and just something in my gut was screaming at me like, you have to get HR in the room. So I told my manager, I'm not having these conversations with you anymore unless HR and our who is it? Our DEI partner is in the room. So conversation happens. Everyone is in the room. Everyone meaning me and the two coworkers, my manager, HR, DEI partner, my manager's manager. All of these people are in the room except for the person who actually said the thing. At that point, my issue wasn't with the person who said the thing. Again, because like I wasn't surprised about it. I know this person responds better to authority. I just wanted to I wanted to go to my manager, tell my manager how I was feeling, and have my manager have that conversation. And instead, I ended up having an issue with how my manager responded to everything and handled everything. This is also from speculation because the manager, this person who said the comment that they did, they were the favorite. There was clear favoritism. So the manager was very resistant to say anything to this person. And then during this big meeting, when everything was said and everything came out, it was only then that HR said to the manager, you need to talk to this person and you should have talked to this person. This took a month for this conversation with all of these people to happen, and then a month for what was supposed to be a simple request as a manager to have with this person. So this is all going on during the Derek Chauvin trial on top of that. And all of a sudden, what's crazy is before that happened, there's literally on paper positive feedback from all of my peers and my manager basically saying, you're fucking killing it at your job. Keep going. As soon as that conversation happened, all of a sudden, I'm a bad employee. I'm problematic to work with. I'm not communicating. I'm not organized. I'm not transparent with my work. All of these things. And then all of a sudden, I'm doing work that my peers are not. And I'm also doing more work, but not getting raises. All of this stuff happened to the point that I was like, I was already on the fence about how to proceed with doing this role, which I was so proud of, everything that I had accomplished and like the team that I stood up. And with everything like that going on, I just felt so gaslit. And I had also started my MBA at that time. And I was just like, I'm going to take a leave of absence from work. And it was frustrating because I was doing both for a short amount of time. I knew I'd be able to do both, but with this as this new factor, that was just putting me over the edge. And the first day of my leave of absence, I talked to my therapist and I talked to a lawyer. My therapist, I told her everything that was going on. She's like, this woman is retaliating against you. And then I talked to a lawyer and I said, do you think something is here? And they're like, this woman is retaliating against you. Absolutely. So then I went down lawsuit row, don't recommend it. And don't get me wrong, it was one of those things where I was like, you will not do this to me. Like, you chose the right one to do this to. It was I know in my gut, if I didn't go through with it, I would just be kicking myself the whole time. And I did it. And what's crazier is that this overlapped with the time that B. Pagels Minor had organized the walkout because of all of the transphobic language that Dave Chappelle had used in his special. So there's like all of this stuff going on with Netflix. And it was just interesting timing. B, shout out to B, because I did reach out to B at one point and I told them what was going on. And I said, I don't, what if this conversation or request to talk to you is gonna, you know, break open any sort of floodgates or something, like protect your peace. But they very much were like supportive. Like we talked. I'm getting a little emotional thinking about it, but they, I appreciate them so much for opening up about that and their experience specifically, because it was so helpful for my journey. And it was also very much the way that they framed it. They're like, this unfortunately happens more often than people think. And it's more disappointing when it's at a company that people, you know, glorify working there. So to talk to someone in the same boat but way more high profile, it was truly a blessing. So B, I do thank you for that. So that'll happen. Mental health, whew, decline on a beautiful decline, just all the way downhill. And this is where like the pivotal moment of mental health was like, no, forget everything you've been told about being the strong Black woman and acting like everything's okay. This is like, you need to be honest with these medical professionals, because if you're not, you're not treating what really needs to be done. When that whole allyship conversation had kicked off and whatnot, I had started therapy like immediately, because I was the whole thing like, this is everything that's happening. I don't understand what's going on, why I feel this way. Did all of the things. Then the leave of absence happened. Was doing therapy every week, sometimes twice a week. And it wasn't until I'm being super vulnerable here, Tay. I ended up in psychiatric care because I ended up in psychiatric care. And for starters, number one, everything they put in the movies about it being absolutely awful or really like terrible, like guards dressed all in white, and that was not my experience. And I really wish the media, they would start taking more responsibility how they depict resources like this in the media, because honestly, all I did, they took me in. They were like, the whole, I'm downplaying it a little bit, but had the whole conversation, had a team, not just like one doctor. Everyone was there with a certain role and expertise and purpose. They asked what happened, what led me there, and I was vulnerable with them. And I told them, like, this is all the stuff that has happened with me and my job. And I I tried to take my life because I don't know how to handle it. And to add insult to injury, my method was to hang myself, which is a huge insult to our ancestors. Huge insult. So what made me stop was because I thought about I thought about my baby nieces and nephews, specifically my little baby cousin Cora, and I just remember thinking, I cannot be the first funeral that they go to. So, got the help I needed. Honestly, all I did, they were like, you have two things to do. You show up to group session, pick any group you want, and then you check in with us for like appointment every morning. And the groups, all I did was color all day. I colored all day. I painted all day. I potted plant. It was a very like, let's eliminate everything else from your life and just focus on one of these five simple things. You can read if you want. You can walk around. We give you food. Food was great. That's the other thing. Hospital food has a bad rap. It was actually pretty good. So here I'm like, I'm well fed, I'm being taken of mentally to the fullest capacity. And I was just kind of like, Christina, we cannot do this anymore. We can't do this anymore. So yeah, after that, I enrolled in a DBT session. It was for 6 months, and it was DBT. Oh, DB, or is it CBT? Oh no, I should know this by now, but it's something, hold on, we're going to get it right. Cognitive behavioral therapy. So I did that program, and that was the turning point, I think. It was like the missing link, because I had been doing therapy with a psychologist. I had been checking in with a psychiatrist. For anyone not remember the difference, psychology, it's strictly talk therapy. Psychiatrist, it can be talk therapy in addition to prescribing medication. And then there's different types of therapy, but depending on the therapist, the different licensing they have, you might get a different therapy experience. But because my therapist is specifically a doctor, a PhD in psychology, that was one way of it. And then with this CBT program, they focused more on psychiatry. So even though my therapists, they were licensed social workers, but their approach was different and everything. And they weren't allowed because they were licensed social workers, they weren't allowed to prescribe the medication. So I had this team of basically talking things out, medicine to regulate these emotions and these depressive episodes, and then psychiatry to literally reframe my thinking. And so it wasn't until that rock bottom moment and having all of those things happen that I was like, this is how it has to be moving forward. Like mental health above all. And I think if there's anything that listeners can take away from this, I think it's great that everything is so normal. All of this stuff is becoming more normalized, right? The mental health days, talking to a therapist, having more therapy related resources as part of the benefits package. I cannot emphasize enough, if you are thinking about it, if it is a fleeting thought, just do it now. Do it now, because even if it's to get your feet wet with a therapist to understand what the experience is like, or because you are searching, just like with dating or interviews, therapy is the same way. Not all therapists are going to vibe with you, and sometimes it takes a while to find the right one. I was lucky in the sense that my psychiatrist and psychologist are women of color. So, it can take a lot out of you, but if you find yourself getting to that point of just utter confusion and depression, and especially if it's just sadness and you don't understand why you're sad, just do it. Truly just do it. It will save you a lot of time and mental strife in the long run. And I regret that I didn't do it sooner. There was definitely a time where my psychologist, she said, like, it's not like, and she said it, it's not like in the movies where it's like if you go and then if you check yourself in and then something happens and they like trick you into staying longer and you're trapped there forever. It's not like that at all. But that was my thing. It was that, and I was just mortified of what my mother would think of everything, whether it was her, I was scared, like, would she be angry at me? Would she be embarrassed? Would she be angry because I embarrassed her? Or would she be sad? Me like this, make her feel like a failure. Just all of these weird projections that weren't true. Because when I was in psychiatric care, my mom came to visit me with my stepdad, and it was for anyone who is listening and kind of has that fear, or just bringing any sort of shame to their family, or just terrified of what your parents would think of you, really what anyone thinks of you. Like my mom showing up in that moment, I was just like, man, I wish I got out of my own head so long ago. But yeah, that happened. That whole like chapter, the timeline's a little different. Didn't go into like specific. Didn't even talk about travel. Which just totally forgot.
We listen. I I can understand, especially working from home, right?
Yeah,
2021 and doing shows back to back. And
yeah,
I'm sitting at my computer, really not even taking breaks. It was bad. And
yeah,
that's when I was like, I need to see a therapist. So I did some research and found one because I said I was so anxious. I didn't want to do anything, like even leave the house because I'm like, oh, I felt like I was always supposed to be working, always supposed to be doing something. Like,
yeah.
and when I got an email, oh, the answer, I got to do this. It was like it was bad. Where I was just like, yo, I want to go home, and I was already home. That's how bad it was.
Uh,
I was like,
that's
yo,
the worst.
was like, I just want to go home, and I'm home. I'm laying in my bed, like I don't want to. And then we were working on different time zones. So people in LA, I'm working early to late. I'm like, yo, when do I go to sleep?
Yeah.
So girl.
That's wild, wild. It's weird too that how do they say it? It's like, oh, this is a story for the grandkids. Like it really is. Like we really lived through that and we really operated like it was okay until it wasn't like that. I can't imagine that if there's anything during Netflix when production stopped. But I remember seeing Glenn Weiss. What was he directing where they showed him basically directing from his
Oh,
home and they had the
yes, yes. What show was that? I can't remember right now.
right, but it was funny to see it on LinkedIn, and it's even funny. Glenn Weiss, he I think it's him and
And Ricky
Ricky
Kirshner.
Kirshner, White Cherry Productions, they still
Yes,
have.
yes.
So they own that company. Glenn Weiss is the director, and Glenn has directed a lot of stuff. He has won a ton of Emmys. I think if anyone has ever watched the Emmys, it's the guy who won the award and then proposed to
Yes.
his, yeah. So that's Glenn Weiss. So yeah, I remember seeing that and just being like, I couldn't imagine me and the Tony's crew working remotely. Like I could, like that's what I thought when I saw that picture of him. Like, what are they doing right now? But yeah, it happened.
Going back to what you mentioned about, like, how your mom feeling. I think a lot of times we, like, if anybody asked me, yeah, I see a therapist. But before then, I probably wouldn't have, because they're probably like, what's wrong with you? You crazy? So, like,
Yeah,
you get that. It's just like, no, that's not why everybody goes to a therapist for their own reasons, right? But
exactly.
and you, like you said, even if you get to a point where you're like, dang, I want to take my own life, or even if you're just at the point where it's like, I feel sad and I don't know why, maybe I should talk to somebody, or I just want to talk to someone who doesn't know me.
Yeah,
Those are all the reasons why. Just, you don't have to be what they say 7:30 to
yeah,
sit there therapist. It's like, go, you know, and it's sad to say, but within our community, that's what it is. Like now, like you said, it's becoming more accepted. People go talk about it freely. But before, I actually saw a therapist when I was younger, right out of college. I'm like, I don't know. I was like feeling lost. And If I would have told my friends, anybody, I was going to see a therapist, they'd have been like, yo.
Yep. Which is so unfortunate.
It's like, damn, just come on, guys. So I kept it to myself. And I see my therapist. And I just recently told my cousin, I was like, oh, yeah, I have therapy. She's like, oh, yeah. How's that going? I was like, yeah, it's good. Maybe you should
And
try
it should,
it.
yep, it should be exactly like that instead of what's wrong with yours. It's like, how's it going? And yeah, that, whew, yeah, it's wild. It's wild to think about. And I think, yeah, we need it. Like, how could we not? Like, thinking back when I like kicked off the story, how, folks and generations before us were like, do XYZ, check these boxes. And it's like, we're doing it and that's not happening. And already that in and of itself is enough to be like, is there something wrong with me? Should I be? It's like already to nip that in the bud, talk to, because no, it's not. It's all these phantom circumstances outside of your control, but if I was talking to you about this 2 years ago, I would not be speaking as freely. I would not be reflecting on it. I would not be able to say or rebuttal certain thoughts with confidence so easily. And I think that's definitely a benefit of therapy. And when you actually do it and once you master those different skills, it's so rewarding, and I feel more at peace, way more at peace. If there's anything I can add, focusing on travel a little bit. So after Netflix, oh, if anyone's wondering how the outcome was, I quote unquote won, or settled, as the attorneys like to say. I didn't get, a life-changing amount of money. But my thing was, it cost Netflix way more than if I had just taken the severance. And then the manager lost her job, and then her manager lost their job. That's how it went down. So yeah, and that there are some friends and coworkers who were along for that journey. And if I haven't said it already to you directly, you know who you are. Thank you so much. Y'all really don't. You really will never understand your words and support and encouragement during that time. No matter how, like, I tried to play it off or come off on beat and make jokes about it, like, I was really going through a lot that y'all didn't see. So thank you for that. But after Netflix, I was finishing up business school at the time. We were going on a capstone project, and we, luckily, my group, shout out to MIC Boardroom 2023, Cornell University, we got to consult for a luxury and wellness resort in the Maldives. So we went, I think, for 10 days, and it was one of those things. First off, we were lucky. We didn't have to pay for anything. After, they reimbursed us for travel through school. And when we were there as compensation for the consulting services, they basically paid for our room and board. That was like $1,000 trip easily. So super, super lucky. Thanking, whatever religious figure, universe, like, thanks to all of that. And what was cool with that was, it was cool in the sense that so it's like, okay, you have all the context of like the mental health and work, right? And now it's kind of like, people do this for a living. They go to these amazing remote areas in these amazing resort and hotel, and they are paid for their knowledge and information. And that was like the first layer. The second layer was the world of wellness and well-being, and fit all of that to just maintain you as a human being. It was amazing that so initially you may hear of like sound bath, therapy, massages, yeah, that's all there. Then they have specialists, and this is the only one I remember because it was so outrageous. They can look at your eye, and based off of the sizing of your pupil at different times and lines without it, they can tell you different things about your health. Like, someone is like an eye therapist, and it's not your eye doctor, and it's just a whole world of all of these other, if we were to look up the resort and the pricing of the package. And like I said, I think it was easily 12 grand worth that they, just let us have. It's a lot of wealthy individuals and ultra high net worth individuals. So, something else with like mental health in general, think of therapy as the baseline. And if you are into creating a system to prioritize your mental health and overall well being, like I said, therapy and like the gym or exercise, just exercise is a baseline. There are so many other things out there in this world that you can find something super niche. And, if you do it once or twice a year, it might cost you an arm and a leg, but that could be that thing that once you have it, it's like, whew. So it wasn't a sound bath. It was like a sound room. And you're in a room and you're thinking, and you're on like a massage table and you're facing up looking at the ceiling. You're thinking like this could be a massage, but it's not. So you close your eyes. They put like a fancy, blindfold over you, and the person goes around and plays all of these different instruments, but it's live, and the vibration of the instruments is like moving through you. I saying it out loud, it sounds a little silly. Having experienced it, I get it. I get why people between $500 and $1,000 for an hour of it was amazing. Mm. So it was pretty cool, the timing of it all with the resort and wellness, and it was just kind of like a theme of being like, hey, you experienced this, opening, my perspective to things that are out here, having that experience, that was cool. Um Another thing regarding travel is while I was traveling while working, let's talk about those three layers: traveling while working and your mental health with that. So after Netflix, I ended up with Endeavor. So Endeavor, if people have heard of William Morris Endeavor, IMG Model. So they're that, but they own all of these different subsidiaries. So one of them is the Harry Walker Agency. And so I was there for a little bit. By happenstance, I got moved to a company called On Location. And On Location, they basically do a lot of like VIP experiences at sporting events and high profile events. The Super Bowl is I think we signed a contract through like 2036 with them. And they got signed to be the official hospitality partner for FIFA World Cup 26 and a whole bunch of other things. But I got hired for their Olympics vertical. On Location is the official hospitality partner for Paris 24, Milan 26, which are the Winter Olympics, and then LA 28 in the summer. On Location was cool. And it was interesting because Paris, it was the end of June that they flew us out there. And I was there for about 6 weeks, 7 weeks. And it was a couple of things. The first was my CBT program was ending. I had to put my therapy on pause because they can't serve overseas, or I can't be cared for overseas. And then I guess those were the main two things. So I had spent all of this time, and if there was anything that I felt was going to impact me mentally or emotionally, I had that cadence and consistency set. So it was like a test. It was like, you're going to be in a different country, you're going to be out of your routine for at least 6 weeks. How will you cope? How will you manage? So I was putting all these things to the test. And with the exception of one incident, which after talking to my therapist, she's like, no, it wasn't a depressive episode. It was you reacting naturally in a situation. I was good. And it was amazing. And I was lucky in the sense that I didn't have to be guest facing. There was a lot going on with like the guest facing teams from what I heard, but I got to work in our hospitality operations center. So I would just show up to a little WeWork space, and whatever went down there, that's what I had to deal with. And other than that, it would just be business as usual. So I think that very much helped it to, and yeah, I just remember, and about like leading up to it, I stopped taking my medication, and I was like, "Oh no, like is something gonna happen?" And then like I didn't, and I was reading, and the particular medication I was on at the time, it was like it's in your system for a while. If like you do still have symptoms, like this isn't until when you would hear them again. So I was like, I'm just gonna try this. I'm gonna stop taking it, and then I'll touch base with my psychiatrist when I'm back in the States. Like it's 2 months. If something extreme happens, the medicine is here. And then this is approaching a year being on medication, which psychiatric care at the time told me, they said, do this at a minimum. Like check in a year, and if you are good, talk with your doctor, your direct doctor, to see if you want to keep going on it or not. And so that's what I think, that was the thing that was very telling, to be in Paris, removed from all of my other natural day to day things, and to be in such a good headspace, where it's like, I don't need to rely on this medication anymore. That was, whew, even just thinking about it, I'm like, man, what a fucking accomplishment. And that's what I did. I came back, I talked to my psychiatrist, and I told her the situation. And, she had been there the whole, cool black woman with dreads. Like, she had been there for the whole journey through the Netflix incident and all that sort of stuff. And she was like, if you're good, you're good. Like, let's just check in, you know, we'll see. Let's just keep checking in, at least through the rest of the year, once a month. And then once a month turned into every other month. And then I don't know when you're gonna like upload this, but yesterday was my last session with her. And she was like, that's it. Like, if anything goes down, you know how to reach me. But we've been monitoring this for a while now. And you are someone who I don't think needs to, you can continue not taking it. So that was cool. It was also really emotional because it was, you're with someone who is associated with this certain chapter in your life, and it was bittersweet because, man, I've done the work to move on from that. And those were her words. She's like, this is because of you. Like, you did the work, and things can turn out one way or another, but you are the one who led to this accomplishment. That was powerful to hear. And then yeah, so with On Location, I want to give two perspectives. So with the Netflix stuff, when it was all going down, so retaliation was one thing, and then I did my leave, I went back, was there for a little bit, thinking we're gonna like work things out. Instead, my manager, she basically fires me. I tell my attorneys, like, great, now this is wrongful termination. So wrongful termination and retaliation, and then serves the papers. Things turned out the way that they did. So that was the thing. When the wrongful termination, the part one, or first example, is when being wrongfully terminated at Netflix, my reaction was to take my life. And then with On Location, I was laid off right before the holiday. They're doing a lot's going on with Endeavor anyway. They're a public company. They're going private. On Location, you probably saw in the media, or some people might know, but if you look it up, On Location is being moved from Endeavor to TKO. And then with the Olympics, the Summer Olympics are always bigger than the Winter Olympics. So it was all of these layers where it was like, if layoffs happen, it won't be surprised. And when it happened, I didn't even think about wanting to end my life. You know what I mean? Like, I hadn't had any sort of suicidal or intrusive thought in the longest time. And instead, I was just kind of like, all right, I'm going to take these last 2 weeks of December off as if I would normally would have, and then decide what I want to do. Because out of habit, it's like you start applying for jobs like it's your job. And then I was like, here's how my last day at On Location looked like. I met with my manager, and then HR joined, and I was like, oh, I know what this is about. I packed up my stuff. I got a sandwich because there was a bunch of food all over the office for the holiday. I took a sandwich to go. I got home and I booked a flight to Peru.
Hey.
That's what I did. That's what I did. And then so yeah, I'll there's a Spanish immersion program in Peru, in Cusco specifically. So I'll do that. I want to learn Spanish to at least be conversational. I'll hit up Machu Picchu at a minimum and like the big, Jesus statue. And then I'll be in Mexico for a week. Then I'll be in the States for a little bit. And then I hop back on a plane to go to LA, and then from LA, I go to Thailand for 2 months. And then after Thailand, I'll pit stop in San Francisco to visit Ma'am. And then Colombia is TBD after San Francisco. So I decided, and really, folks, if you're still listening or however you edit this tag, like if we were to think about everything that I shared and then being laid off, great. I will gladly take it. I feel like a lot has happened and I'm giving myself at least through like the 4th of July to just travel, do stuff for me, cross things, a couple of things off of the bucket list, and just you know, really, I want to do this intentionally um, for a couple of different reasons. And the first is to think now that I am grounded in these mental health tools and philosophies, what does it look like for me when pursuing income in the future? And how does my mental, so do you know what I mean? So I don't want to be like, yeah, I took 6 months off and then come back and jump into another corporate role.
Right back
Exactly.
into it.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, are we thinking, like, if we were to do that, what are things about the work culture you want prioritized? So your mental health isn't jeopardized in any sort of way. And even asking, what does source of income mean to you? It's kind of weird. I understand why it's happening, but it's weird to queue up YouTube and see all these different influencers, for lack of a better term, say like, here's my video on my 7 different ways that I have income. And before, you might look at these people or hear this and say like, what, that's weird, why would you want all of that stress? Just be efficient, do get a job, do one thing. And again, it's like, we can't. That philosophy of working one job and having everything taken care of for it, it's an old philosophy. It applies to an outdated system, and unfortunately this is our reality. It's like, this is what we have to do now to afford these basic quote unquote American dream things. So that and I bring up that example because when asking myself, what does income look like to me, I do have to ask, do I want a corporate job? Do I want to freelance again? Do I want to do 3 of these 7 different work streams from this YouTube video? So thinking about that as well. And I mean, when you, with travel and mental health, when you remove yourself from the full environment, like moving from work, being laid off from work is one thing, but leaving the country where all of these systemic issues are still a hotbed that contribute to manifesting all of these different situations that are out of your control, absolutely, like, remove yourself fully from it and give yourself that opportunity to bring in those new manifestations, to shift your mind, shift your perspective. And if anything, if it still doesn't work, if you don't feel the same, at least you did that. You can go back and say, I tried this, it didn't work. Maybe there's something else I need to be looking at, or another approach that I need to think about. It that's the thing for me. So with this layoff, the whole mental health, like the growth of the mental health, but also applying it in this new perspective, I think it's one of those weird full circle moments, you know? So that's what we doing. And then the same rules are gonna apply, you know, when I'm for Thailand for 2 months, like, that's bold. Some people have done it before. I've studied abroad when I was younger in undergrad, but it's different being of this age, going through what I've gone through, and being on my own. So, it'll be another interesting test, for lack of a better term, but because of that little trial run in Paris, I'm excited, I'm confident, I'm feeling geared up and ready to go, and, if I had not gone through what I did through work, and if I did not have the mental health journey that I had, I would not have I wouldn't be having this conversation with you. I would not have planned 6 months of travel. I'd be like, "What are you, crazy? They're gonna have a gap on your resume. They're not gonna hire," like, I don't yeah. Yep.
Listen, first of all, thank you for sharing. Because didn't know you were going to talk about all that. Did not.
Surprise. That's what you get. If you haven't talked to your friend in over 6 years, call them because this is what happens.
Golly. And it's funny because we stayed in touch through all those things. Like, I remember, like,
Yeah.
being on the train. I think you texted me. You was like, yo, I just saw someone that looked just like you.
Yeah.
And then we were just back and forth, like, yo, we got to catch up in Brooklyn. Da, da, da. All these things. And wow. So you're right. You never know what someone's going through.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad that this is now, like, this is the outcome. You are going, even though that's horrible, like you went through all this pain, now to be like, you know what? I'm gonna go and
Yeah.
really put myself first. Like this, you are doing the ultimate of self care. Like, I think it's just like, I'm gonna travel for 6 months and I'm just gonna go out there and really live life instead of existing, because a lot of times that's, I think that's what we do, and I try not to do that. It's just like, yo, Tasia, it's so much out here, right?
It's so true.
From in my borough to out the country to across the country, there's so much here, right? There's so much. Like, after, usually after a job, I'm like, I'm booking a trip, I'm going someplace, because it has been that strenuous on me. It's like,
Yeah.
I need to go. I need to get away and do something for me, right? And I know I'm sacrificing money, and I've done it a bunch of times where it's just like, man, I'd rather go on that trip. I'd
Mm-hmm.
rather go to that event, because to me, money comes and goes, and money flows. Money will be there. There's always ways to make money, always ways to get money. But for your mental health, your mental well being, gee, taking
Yeah.
these trips, I need it.
You
And
better.
I need it. It's like, yo, I'm so glad I went on this trip. Geesh. Listen, you gotta give me like where you'll be, your itinerary, because maybe, just maybe, I'll pop up on you like, hey, girl.
Could you imagine? Oh my gosh. Tay, I would love it. We won't meet in the same borough, but I'll meet you in Peru.
Let's do that. Yes, let's do that.
Nah, man, absolutely. Yeah, I'll send over the dates for sure. I would love it. I'd get it such a. Just thinking about it cracks me up.
Listen, I have a little credit I had to use, so
See, we can't let the credit expire.
exactly. Oh, I will not. So yeah, let me know where you gonna be, and let's see if I can work it out.
Love it. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Oh, your future looks bright, girl. I tell you
What?
that. Like,
Thank you.
it's like, oh, yeah. I'm just so
Thank you
happy.
so much. Oh, yeah.
I'm happy. Like, I am. I really am.
I
Oh man.
appreciate it. Nah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for because I think what is it? Before we started recording, I was like, I know I pinged you like, I want to be on your podcast.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for thank you for having me and letting me share this story. I really hope, if if you listen this long and whatever, that something speaks to someone, or it helps someone, or if they needed some sort of sign or whatever. I hope it does that for some people. And I also, what is it? I don't want to say I'll be travel blogging, but I will, and I'll be doing some sort of literature and writing about the journey. Give you like a link to the platform once it's spun up and everything too. So
Keep me posted, and I'm sure people listening to this and your friends and family, this is helpful, right? Your story is helpful. And it makes me even think like back at some times where I was just like, yo, just being in this work environment, which I didn't know was even toxic, or you just put yourself in that position like, yo, yeah, that wasn't right. Or now
yeah,
I understand why I felt this way because, it's so again, thank you for sharing. And I'm looking forward to what's next for you, whether it is getting another corporate gig and seeing how you navigate that, to saying, you know what, I'm just going to go back to freelancing, or I'm just going to live here in Thailand
yeah,
and, make a living out here. It can happen.
it's so true. We
Yeah,
see it every day. Why not us?
exactly. It's all, what's at the end of the day, what's good for you mentally, physically, spiritually, financially. So, yeah. Oh, thanks again. I don't even know how to end this because it's like this is the Road with Tay podcast. I'm your host Tasia, aka. Thanks for listening, watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And be on the lookout for Christina's vlog, blog, whatever she's gonna put out to keep us updated on her travels. Peace.